Good morning. Welcome to the 214th meeting of the Audit Committee, Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District, Tuesday, April 4th, 2023, 7:30 a.m. Roll call by the chair.
All right, we'll note that all trustees are present, with Trustee Fair online.
Can I get approval of the committee meeting minutes, February 28, 2023?
So move.
Second.
There is no comments by the chair. Internal audit, presentation of report, review of the administration of the district employee medical pharmacy benefits plan. Todd, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me a little better? There we go. I do have, good morning, everyone. So I do have Brett Simmons here with me over here from Armanino. He helped work on the audit. He should have helped support me answering questions, help answer questions you guys may have. So we go ahead and use this presentation here. We'll go over that. We'll use this to go over the report. Go over to slide 1. Try this one. Everybody hear me? There we go. I'm in stereo. All right. So the district basically provides health benefits to its employees and pre-Medicare eligible retirees. That's retirees that are under 65. That's medical, pharmacy, and dental. Now, the claims processes in medical and pharmacy plans are self-funded by the district, so they're basically underwritten by the district. So we're really kind of taking the risk. We're funding the claims. The dental is on its own. We're not looking to dental because that's on a normal policy. That's a normal insurance policy. So there is a stop loss policy that is underwritten by the carrier that is attached to this plan. The district utilizes this service of third-party administrator to administer the plans on behalf of the district. The TPA is also the carrier and administrator for the stop-loss insurance program. Now, since 2012, that carrier or that TPA has been Cigna. They've been the third-party administrator, and they also been the stop-loss, the carrier and the administrator for the stop-loss as well. So if you look at slide 2, you can see starting with 2012, there's an ordinance in 2011 approving the contract with Cigna. You can see the resolutions and ordinances and so forth throughout time. The last ordinance was in 2017. You can see after that, there was a resolution in 2020. We're missing some resolutions in there. That's going to be a recommendation. We'll talk about that later. Internal audit did review this area in years 2013 and 2018. Cigna was a TPA for both those audits. So I'm going to explain a little bit about this area. I don't think any of you guys were here for any of those audits. So district utilizes, on slide 3, utilizes a benefits consultant firm to assist with some of the processes here. They help with the TPA selection process. They help with the underwriting, the design of the plan. Because basically they got to kind of revisit the plan every year, tweak it, and maybe redesign it slightly. They help with cost monitoring and reporting throughout the year. You look down the bottom half, you can kind of see from a picture standpoint, development of the plan is really a combination of the TPA, Cigna, management from MSD, and then the consultant. They all kind of come together to develop the plan every year. So obviously we want to have a good plan for our employees, but there's always the balance of controlling costs that goes along with it. If you go to slide 4, you can see an overview of the expenses. We looked at the plan year 2021. It shows the medical claims and the prescription drug claims. Overall, we have overall plan cost of $13.7 million. We were under budget. The budget was $14.3 million. So we're under budget about $650,000. You can look at down the bottom half there of the page. We averaged about 1,015 employees per month on the plan. That includes the retirees and cohort participants. The average monthly cost was about $1,100 per employee per month. If you look at the history at the bottom half of the page, you can see we've really stayed pretty steady with costs. Management has done a really good job of controlling costs, I think. The scope period was 2021. You can see even 2022, we're at $13.6 million. I think a big part of it is the idea that they've rolled out the whole idea of the incentive program and the wellness program, I think that's really helped. A lot of people are exercising more. They're going to the doctor, getting the checkups, they're getting their screenings. I think we're avoiding a lot of big health problems. I think it's people are generally more healthy. I think and it helps control costs. So I think it's been a good thing. Move to slide 5, a little overview of how the actual process works. Employees basically sign up for the health plan through using Oracle, whatever version of Oracle we have now. We're in the process of updating it. But that's usually done in open enrollment in the last quarter of the year. But throughout the year, you can have life events. People get married, people get divorced, they have kids and so forth. And there's going to be changes throughout the year. That information is uploaded to the Cigna system, or the TPA system. They review it and do some exception reports, and they work it out they work out the details with our staff here. Now, throughout the year, plan members are going to go get services from the providers, the doctors, pharmacies, and so forth. Service provider will file a claim with the TPA. TPA processes the claim and then have to pay the claim, but we have to fund the claim. So when that happens, the TPA's bank basically look at the bottom going across to the right. They're going to submit a request to us for funding. And we basically wire money from our operating account to a healthcare bank account that is strictly for paying this or funding these claims. And then that TPA's bank account draws that money out as those checks hit their bank. They're presented to be cleared. We do carry an extra amount in our healthcare bank, just to protect us in case we have to make sure we have enough money in there. There's about 2 weeks of extra money in there. Any questions on that? Slide 6. This whole process is really a coordinated effort between MSD and the TPA. If you look on this slide, you can see how it's divided up. There's a lot of communication, reporting back and forth. Now, on the MSD side, we're enrolling the participants. We remove the plan participants. We assist the plan participants, and we collect the premiums. We fund the claims. We pay them admin fees. We review the TPA reports. And we also monitor what the TPA is doing in the process. Now, on the TPA side, they're actually adding the plan participants to the plan itself. They're the ones adding it into the system. They remove the plans. They provide customer service. When you have a question about your claim, you're calling the TPA, and they're providing the customer service. They process the claims. They request the funding. They pay the claims. They develop reports to the district. They handle the subrogation. They handle the pharmacy rebates and the stop loss, as I mentioned earlier. Any questions? So as far as our scope, I guess the main thing just to tell you, we did, as I mentioned earlier, we did look at year 2021 as far as data and activity. So move on to slide 8. So the overall objectives of engagement were to ensure that district procedures are adequately designed, performed. The areas include participant eligibility, enrollment, employee premiums, funding of claims, payment of TPA fees, the covert processing, HIPAA compliance. We also wanted to make sure our procedures to monitor TPA's performance are adequate. That's a big part of it as well. We want to monitor the enrollment, how they're charging us admin fees, how they're performing the claim funding and payments, subrogation, rebates, and performance guarantees. Now, we do have an opportunity for improvement around our monitoring of the claim funding and payments, and then we also have another one around the 3 areas of subrogation, rebates, and performance guarantees. That's all going to be under one item. On slide 9, we also wanted to make sure the control and procedural structures within between the district and the TPA are effectively designed and implemented. Now, from a transaction standpoint, down in the middle there, we want to make sure the claims are processed only for eligible participants, which is pretty important here. I'm going to make sure the appropriate amount of premiums were collected, the covert accounts are properly processed and monitored. We do have a recommendation around that area. Finally, we want to make sure the funding and claim transactions are appropriate and properly supported. The billings for the admin fees are accurate and supported. And then we also want to make sure the results of the TPA soccer engagement are addressed appropriately. And that stands for Service Organization Control Report. Slide 10. Now, to accomplish our objectives, what were our procedures? First thing we did was obtain a number of documents. We got the summary plan description document, the MSD employee benefits guide. We did get access to the TPA's website for plan reporting. There's a whole website they have that's strictly for reports that are related to our plan. And that's really a good resource for us and for the process owners. We did get a hold of the ordinances and resolutions. As I mentioned, we do have a recommendation around the resolutions. Got a hold of the HIPAA policy and procedure document and for our work papers. Obviously, look through our work papers from last time to get us really gotten going on this. We did perform walkthrough procedures and testing procedures around areas that are performed by the district, which involves participant eligibility, enrollment, employee premiums, funding of the claims, payment of TPA fees, COBRA processing, and HIPAA compliance. Any questions? We also, slide 11, perform walkthroughs of district procedures to monitor the TPA's performance in different areas. So areas such as enrollment, how they're charging the administrative fees, how they're requesting funding and making the payments, processes for subrogation, rebates, and performance guarantees. All right, slide 12. So after the walkthrough, we performed actual testing of the data. So we obtained the employer master file, got that from HR, and then we got plan participant files per the district and per the TPA. So we use those to identify research any variances between the two sources of data, basically bang those two reports together, making sure there's no differences. Looked for appropriateness of coverage. Reviewed for any ineligible individuals or fictitious employees, so to speak. So we also reviewed for dependents exceeding the age 26 limitation, as well as retirees and dependents exceeding the age 65 limitation. So basically that whole area, we looked for anybody who was on the plan who shouldn't have been on the plan, basically. We also looked at the COBRA account listing, read for unpaid accounts or old uncollectible accounts, any accounts that required some attention. Payroll transaction detail file, we use that to test the withholding amounts, make sure the premiums are being withheld properly. Slide 13. So the top half, there's a list of reports that pertain to the funding and the payments of the claims. So basically, we took all those reports at the top there, which is their check registers, experience reports, cleared check reports, and so forth, bank statements. Took all those items and tested and reconciled that with the requested, for the requested funding amounts, the cleared payments, the claims payments. We specifically look at two specific months and really tested those months thoroughly, and we found no issues, just to let you know. Any questions on that? Slide 14, we did look at the invoices for the admin fees and stop loss fees. We recalculated for accuracy. Compared that to the billing, compared the billing to the enrollment data, because that's really what it's based on, the enrollment. We also looked at the TPA soccer report. Any questions on that? All right, slide 15, as far as the overall results, we had a satisfactory opinion. You know, I think overall this area is in pretty good shape. This went pretty well. We did identify 5 opportunities for improvement. None of the items were significant individually or in the aggregate. The item 2 and 3 are in regards to monitoring, but I think we just need to beef that area up a little bit. There's no major issues there. So we'll go over the 5 items on the next page here. Any questions? Slide 16, so that's to do with the board approval of the TPA contract. As I mentioned, I kind of mentioned it earlier. So Ordinance 14834 was adopted in 2017. That covered the period of 2/1/18 through 1/31/19. That's when we had this funky year. We've now go into calendar year. But anyway, so the ordinance contains a provision stating that the contract may be renewed from year to year at the option of the district, which it has been. So normally the way this works, once a contract is approved under an ordinance, normally when it's renewed the following years, it's usually done through a resolution. So we were missing some resolutions. We did have one for 2020. We're missing 19, 21, and 2020 and 23. So if you go to slide 17, this appears to be strictly an administrative oversight. The annual procedures for this area are very thorough. They're just really, as I mentioned, has really done a good job of controlling costs in this area. So what happens every year is annually the costs are analyzed by the district with the assistance of the healthcare consultant, who really does specialize in this type of thing. They're very familiar with the market. It's basically all they do. So they provide some cost structures and analysis to the district executive committee for review and discussion. Ultimately, the committee approves the new version of the plan we're going to go with, and they have updated the agreements each year, extending the contract with the TPA, which is Cigna. But technically, to put the bow on the top of the package, there should have been some resolutions passed with you guys. So we're recommending in future years that they present a resolution or to go out for a new bid, there would be an ordinance that makes sure that happens moving forward. Any questions?
What do we have to do to do something right away?
I'm sorry?
Do we have to take some action right away?
It wouldn't be a bad idea to have a resolution for the 23 contract, I think.
We can put together a resolution and bring that to the board. Yeah. That is a good idea.
Right.
No, I'm not surprised. As usual, that's a great idea.
Any other questions, guys? All right, slide 19, item 2. This has to do with the monitoring of the healthcare claim payment and funding request activities. As mentioned earlier, the claim payments are self-funded by the district. So, TPA is requesting funding from the district as the claims are processed, as the checks are being presented for payment at their bank. So this is one of the most important areas for the monitor in the overall process. A lot of money moving back and forth here. So we just identified some opportunities to further strengthen the district's monitoring procedures here. So basically what's going on right now, currently the process owners are really just reviewing the lump sum documentation. They're not really looking at the detail and reconciling that activity necessarily. There are also some reports that are developed by the consultant, but they're at a high level. So what we're recommending, as you go to slide to 21, skip 20, go into 21, is we're recommending the process owner utilizing the reports that are listed there. It's really similar to what we did in the audit. Look at the check registers, look at the clear check detail, and look at the detail and do some reconciliations for those months. They just need to add that process to what they're already doing. So I think that will make it stronger. Any questions? Number 3, slide 22. Monitoring of performance guarantees, subrogation, and prescription drug rebates. So performance guarantees, there's within the contract, there's some performance guarantees that the TPA are trying to, they're expected to meet certain metrics. Involves customer service, the processing of the claims, their payment and financial accuracy, and so forth. If they don't meet those expectations, they have to cut a check to us, basically a rebate check for that. So what we're recommending, we like to see some improvement in the monitoring of these areas. We did not find anything in the actual testing of the activity. We didn't find errors, anything like that, but we just strictly focus on how we're monitoring this area. There didn't seem to be any formal in place monitoring procedures for these 3 particular areas. Now, the consultant does do some reporting, but again, it's at a much higher level. So things to be considered when we're looking at these areas, or were the amounts calculated properly? Did we get paid timely? Did we get paid at all? Now, in the past, the prior audit, which was a different group, but we did have some issues with rebate amount, so we missed a check. We didn't get a check for it was like a year late. So the point is it can happen. So that's why when we have solid monitoring around this. And the prescription rebates, they're big dollars. We get about $1 million a year in prescription rebates. So it's about $250,000 per quarter. So we're recommending at slide.
Todd.
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
You said the rebates, you are looking closely to make sure rebates come back. Is that what you were saying?
We recommend that we look more closely. Yeah, we monitor more closely.
How about subrogation amount?
I'm sorry?
Subrogation. Are there any issues in this?
We didn't see any issues there, but I mean, we're still going to monitor that. But yeah, the rebates are where the big dollars are at. Any other questions? Okay, so we're recommending that the process owner develop and implement some formal standard procedures that would involve looking at a list of reports. Now, to get to your point, there will be a report on subrogation that they could monitor and follow up with the TPA on and make sure that they can check the status and making sure we're getting the money basically. So we're basically making sure the items are calculated properly and we're receiving the payments timely. That's the main thing. Okay, next item as slide 24, available consultant services. This is kind of more of a best practice. It's something we identified when we were doing the audit. We realized that the consultant that works with the district has the ability to perform audit review services at the pharmacy program. They have a program in place. They have specialized software and a team that does this work. They have used this in the past. Last time it was 2020. So we're just recommending, hey, let's add this to the RFP. The RFP is coming up. Have them include that service in the proposal. And if it's worth, if it's not cost prohibitive, I think it's something to be worthwhile taking advantage of because that's all they do. They're much better at that kind of thing than we are, to be quite honest. So we just recommended they include that in the RFP. So any questions on that? Last item, number 5, slide 25. A fairly minor items regarding the COBRA accounts. We looked at the aging listing as of February 28th, 23, so it was just a month ago. We kept updating. We looked at, that's the most recent one we looked at. The total balance was about $16,500, but there of 26 individual accounts, but most of the accounts are really old. 90% are more than 3 years old. You can see go down further. 20 of them go back to 2015. 15 even go back to 2012. So that listing needs to be cleaned up. We're basically recommending let's write those off. For the most part, it seems the procedures around the area are working now. We did have one account that was allowed to bill with 21 billings with no payments, but that was stopped at July 2021. Since that time, we haven't seen any issues. So what we're recommending at slide 26, first of all, let's clean up that overall aging, get rid of all those old accounts. That will reduce it to probably about 2 or 3 accounts. That will be much easily managed. And then we'd like to see HR and finance just kind of revisit the procedures around, monitoring this listing and the billing. Make sure we shut down the billing and take the person off the plan when they're stop making payments or when they've actually got their own insurance. So make sure we do it timely. So any questions on that one? It's basically all I got. Well, I should say, so if you go to slide 27, as far as action plans, the process owner should have these all implemented by July 31st. None of these are overly complicated. I don't think so. I don't see any reason that won't happen. So any questions?
Yeah, I'm aware there's a couple bills that are floating around Jeff City concerning pharmacy benefit managers. May not be an audit question per se, but as I understand them, they would actually implicate self-insured plans. At least the last I looked at them, I don't know what state they're in, if they have legs or not, but I just wanted to see if someone had been keeping an eye on those.
They're now on our watch list that you mentioned. We're going to look it up. It's
Yeah.
not something we've caught up to this point.
Okay.
And give me the term again, the pharmacy what?
Pharmacy.
Pharmacy benefit
benefit.
manager, PBM.
Okay. We will look.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Or- Well, thank you.
Okay, we've got one more item. This is, you should have a detail sheet for a resolution that'll be presented at the board meeting next week. This is to exercise the option year on Armanino's contract. Armanino is our internal audit provider. They've been with us for a while. They are able to provide us a high level of expertise on a wide range of internal controls and fraud kind of expertise across construction, across IT, operations, safety. So they've been a good partner. I do recommend that you approve the renewal of their contract for one more year. Excuse me. They work about 1,800 to 1,900 hours a year with Todd to review internal controls across departments. The amount is about $306,000. That was from the RFP that they process that they went through and won a couple of years ago. Any questions about the detail sheet or Armanino? All right, that is all we had for the audit committee meeting.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Todd. Next meeting, tentative date, May the 2nd, 2023. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. You are trustee Nicholasison.
Good morning. Welcome to the 240th meeting of the Program Management Committee, Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. Can I get a roll call?
The record will note that all trustees are present, including trustee Fair, who's online.
Approval of committee minutes, February 28th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
There are no comments by the chair. Engineering Department agenda items.
Good morning, trustees. Fairly healthy agenda for you today, so feel free to speak up if you have a question as I continue through the program. So first item is the Jefferson Barracks Tunnel Project. This action will appropriate additional funds to an ongoing construction contract with SAK Construction. This is an unplanned appropriation. The work being done on this project consists of construction of 17,800 feet long tunnel. The purpose of the project is to construct the 7-foot diameter deep tunnel, eliminating the Martigny and Jefferson Barracks pump stations in South St. Louis County. This is an unplanned supplemental appropriation of $3,750,000 is necessary due to unforeseen change in site conditions. During the tunneling process, geotechnical features beyond those outlined in the contract were discovered. The features resulted in additional water infiltrating and additional drilling and grouting required. Delays in production for addressing the features pushed back other work. And then we had an additional material cost escalation for the lining pipe being used on the project. This supplemental appropriation will bring our total appropriation for the project to $158,750,000 for the project. I have Alan Mueller, my assistant director for our construction management group, that's going to provide a brief presentation. This has been a long project that we've been working on. We brought it to you before for a significant change. This will be the final time we'll come to you, so we thought it would be important to kind of give you some finality as to where we're ending up with the project. So this time you'll have a presentation in front of you, so I'm going to turn it over to Alan.
Thank you, Rich. Good morning, trustees. As
Pull that a little closer.
Is that a little better? As Rich stated, I'm going to give everyone an update on the status of the JB tunnel and where we're currently standing. Slide 2. At our last update, we discussed retrieving the stuck 11-foot TBM that encountered a differing site condition and utilizing a 14-foot tunnel boring machine to complete the project. To date, we have completed all the mining on the 3.4-mile long tunnel. We completed approximately 7,100 feet of tunnel using an 11-foot TBM. We also completed a recovery shaft, hand mined back to the 11-foot TBM and recovered the 11-foot TBM. And we completed the remainder of the tunneling, approximately 10,000 feet, utilizing a 14-foot tunnel boring machine. That tunnel boring machine, as we'll discuss in more detail, is capable of probing out in front of it and grouting any karst areas or differing site conditions that we may have discovered. We did encounter one additional differing site condition, our karst area, which we were able to successfully tunnel through utilizing the TBM, and we'll go into more detail on that in a moment. Slide 3. So I'd like to bring it back to the intermediate recovery shaft and tunnel and how we were able to successfully retrieve the 11-foot diameter tunnel boring machine. We excavated through the karst area utilizing a method called spiling or installing spiles. They're basically 4-inch diameter steel tubes drilled around the outside of the tunneling alignment. Once they were in place, they were filled with grout and pressurized. There's valves inside those tubes, which when you get to a certain pressure, release the grout to any void areas surrounding those tubes. This created a shield that cut off groundwater and gave us a stable area to work within. We then slowly excavated through the differing site condition, moving 2 foot forward at a time, installing a combination of steel ribs, wood lagging, and shotcrete to secure the tunnel as we moved forward. Briefly touching upon the photos, on the top left, each green dot represents a spiling that was installed. The center photo, a little bit hard to see, but you can see the steel tubes. You might be able to see the steel tubes around the outside of the steel lagging. And that's just the very beginning of the excavation as we move forward very slowly through this process. The bottom is a plan view of the excavation plan showing the spiling and the steel ribs. And on the right is a view of the tunnel from the recovery shaft towards the excavation. Slide 4.
How tall is that?
So
20 feet.
it was about 20 feet. That was larger because we needed more space to get the large equipment down there to excavate through. So most of the tunnel is either 11 or 14, but this excavated tunnel right here is closer to 20 foot because we needed the larger equipment to get down there and excavate through the differing site condition. Slide 4. So the left photo, the retrieval of the 11-foot TBM, on the left you can see in the middle, that's the seam that we had encountered. It varied from a couple feet wide to, maybe 6 or 7 feet. It also varied from side to side as we were able to excavate through it. The key here is, though, we were able to cut off the water supply and get some grout in there to firm up that soil to safely excavate through it. And on the right, that's a photo of the 11-foot tunnel boring machine after we recovered it. Next slide, slide 5. I wanted to touch upon here the 14-foot tunnel boring machine that was brought in to complete the tunnel. This was specifically brought in case we were to encounter any other differing site conditions. So this 14-foot TBM is capable of probing and grouting through the face of the tunnel if additional features were encountered. Typically, we would probe between 100 and 200 foot ahead of the machine, which is essentially close to a daily shift of what we could achieve. So we wanted to see what was going on in front of us. If a karst feature was encountered or were to be encountered, we would utilize grouting from the face of the TBM through those probe holes to cut off the water and fill the voids with grout as best we can and continue to slowly move forward. Slide 6, please. So as mentioned earlier, after excavating around 1,000 feet, we encountered an additional karst area or differing site condition. This time we were able to utilize the new 14-foot diameter machine to probe ahead, so we knew we were going to encounter it ahead of time. We used the grout feature to fill the voids and seal off the water as best we could before we encountered it with the tunnel boring machine, and then we're able to continue this process to slowly move forward. This whole process took about two and a half months to get through this feature, but is significantly less than what we would have been able to do otherwise. I also want to bring up, as part of the agreement we had with the contractor to move forward with the 14-foot diameter machine, SAK agreed upon a cost-sharing measure in case additional karst features or differing site conditions were encountered on this. And essentially, they boiled down to two things. We reduced the equipment rates that were agreed upon ahead of time. We kept charges on equipment rental at 8 hours per day, even though there were 2 shifts work to get through this, 2 shifts a day work. And there was no rental or slow production fee on the 14-foot diameter tunnel boring machine. The overall reduction that was realized using these agreed upon cost sharing methods was a little over $600,000 or $60,000 per week. However, in total, it did cost about an additional $2 million to get through this feature. Next slide, please. Just a quick summary slide. And it makes me feel good to see the TBM coming out the bottom there, so I like to show that off. We excavated a little over 7,000 feet with the 11-foot TBM, and again, a little over 10,000 feet with the 14-foot, and we were able to hand tunnel. We did hand tunnel about 600 feet in total. The top photo, that's just after the tunnel boring machine had excavated through the solid rock. What you're seeing on the sides there is solid rock that was excavated. And you can see that the yellow pipe on top is bringing fresh air to the crews. And on the side, it's water and electric as well. And on the bottom, that is the 14-foot tunnel boring machine holing through, completing the almost 3.5-mile long tunnel. Next slide, please. Slide 8. So what's remaining? What we have remaining is we're installing the 7-foot diameter fiberglass reinforced polymer pipe, or FRP. This pipe is tough. It's inert, resistant to gases and corrosion. So it's an excellent utilization for this particular method, what we're doing here in the tunnel. Once that's installed, we need to grout the annular space between the outside, the rock wall of the tunnel, and the outside of the pipe. And then we need to connect the 6 drop shafts. This is scheduled to be about a year away, or the spring of 2024. And the photos you're looking at are just pictures of the pipe currently being installed inside the tunnel. Next slide, please. And then finally, the funding summary slide here. The original appropriation was $65 million. In July of 2020, a supplemental appropriation was brought to the board and agreed upon of $29 million to excavate through the differing site condition and recover the 11-foot tunnel boring machine. In February of 21 and January of 22, the board approved 2 additional supplemental appropriations totaling $61 million. These supplemental appropriations were to acquire the 14-foot diameter tunnel boring machine and complete the original scope of tunneling work. So the current total appropriation is $155 million. As we briefly discussed here, we did encounter an additional differing site condition, or karst area. To excavate through that cost around a little over $2 million. Additionally, as Rich touched upon, we have encountered material escalations, specifically to the fiberglass resin pipe and the resin in that pipe. And then also to the grout. We've seen grout prices increase, specifically the cement cost, the cement inside the grout. And that was primarily due to the delays in completing this job. The escalation costs are $1.75 million. So we are asking for an additional supplemental funding request of $3,750,000 to complete this project. Next slide.
I have a question real quickly. Is this the last supplemental appropriation you'll be requesting?
Yes.
Did we acquire the tunnel boring?
That is the contractors at the end of the job. That's typically how the tunneling contracts work. It's in the cost. It's like if we're excavating a sewer, it's like contractors backhoe to excavate.
So that's really rent.
I'm sorry.
It's really rent, or
yes,
yeah.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Al. All right, we'll move on to the next item. Next item is the DC 0203 Sanitary Relief Phase 3 and 4. This appropriates additional funds to an ongoing construction contract with J.H. Barrett Company. This is an unplanned supplemental appropriation. The work on this project consists of construction of approximately 18,000 lineal feet of 8 to 54-inch sanitary sewers. This construction is the third phase of a multi-phase improvement project. The purpose of the project is to alleviate surcharging sanitary sewers. This project will provide for the elimination of 7 constructed sanitary sewer overflows along Deer Creek that are required to be out by the consent decree by the end of this year. This supplemental appropriation of $300,000 is necessary due to the discovery of an additional sewer line that was not included in the original contract documents. In other words, it's not really an extra to the contract. We're actually adding a reach of sewer, several reaches of sewer to the contract while this contractor's out there. This line is currently tied to an existing sewer line that we're scheduled to abandon. So we'll need to replace that line and tie it into our new sewer that's being installed. This work includes the installation of approximately 400 feet of sewer and manhole construction for clearing and restoration. The supplemental appropriation of $300,000 will bring our total appropriation on this project to $45,800,000. This is easily the largest open cut sanitary sewer the district's ever put in. Right along Deer Creek through the cities of Brentwood, Ladue, very significant project that is nearing completion and is fortunately for the district has gone very, very well. So we're real happy with it. I do have a display drawing that she's going to put up on the screen right there that shows this additional sewer that we're adding to Barrett's contract. Kind of give you some perspective where we're at. It's like at Litzinger and McKnight Road. There's a quarry, formerly Rock Hill Quarry. I think it's being used as a landfill now. And right above that is McCarthy Brothers Contracting right along Deer Creek there. There's a quarry operation. There's a pipe for leachate, and then they also have a quarry building there that needs to be connected to the sanitary sewer. The purple line you see there is the new sewers that we put in, and we're be adding to the contract the green line that you see kind of lower right hand. The X'd out yellow version is the old sewer that is being abandoned, so we've got to connect that, taking that out of the creek and put it into the new sewer to the north there. Are there any questions? Thank you. Next item is the Lower Merrimack Wastewater Treatment Facility Expansion Phase 2. This action appropriates additional funds to an ongoing construction project being constructed by Blocker Construction. This is a fiscal year 23 budgeted planned appropriation. The work consists of the construction and the expansion of the Lower Merrimack Wastewater Treatment Facility and various other improvements within the plant. The purpose of the project is to increase overall plant capacity to treat future additional flows from the interim Fenton Wastewater Treatment Plant and to improve reliability of critical aging physical assets within the plant and to meet our current regulatory and future regulatory permitting requirements. This is a partial funding request. A supplemental appropriation of $30 million brings the total appropriation for this project to $87,700,000. There will be a future appropriation in fiscal year 24 for the total appropriation of $117 million. Any questions? All right. The next item is also for the Lower Merrimack Wastewater Treatment Plant expansion. It is for our construction management services. These are the services that Alan uses to oversee the construction. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to amend the construction management contract with KAI 360 Construction Services for a 1-year extension to provide the construction management services. The construction management services to be provided consists of bidability and constructability review during the design and the construction management services during construction. The total value of the construction management services is estimated at $5,200,000. With this additional supplemental appropriation of $2 million, the current contract is at $4.4 million. Kind of an update on the MWB participation on this this construction management project. Currently, the commitment for this project by KA 360 was 61% participation for the project. These $2 million, they're anticipating about almost 85% participation, which brings their percentage to date at 59%, just under their commitment, which should be no problem meeting that commitment. Any questions? All right. The next item, excuse me, is the Harlem-Baden City Shed Mitigations, Ashland to Essex. This appropriates fund to an ongoing construction project with Keeley Construction Group. This is also a planned appropriation for fiscal year 2023. This work to be done under this contract consists of construction of 2 detention basins with a combined storage volume of 40 acre-feet, 2 rain gardens, approximately 2,600 linear feet of storm sewers from 8 to 48 inches in diameter to drain to the detention basins. The purpose of this project is to reduce building backups and alleviate wet weather surcharging and overland flooding from the combined sewer system within the Harlem City Shed and the Bissell Point watershed. This is a partial funding request. The project was one of 5 projects designed as part of this. The supplemental appropriation of $2 million brings the total appropriation of the project to $6 million and will fully fund the construction for this project. I misspoke. The original $2 million was planned for next fiscal year, but the project is gone so well, we had to move the supplemental to keep the contractor working. Should not impact the budget for fiscal year 23. Okay. Next project is also a Baden City Mitigation Basin. This is for separation sewers to connect to the basins. This action appropriates funds to an ongoing construction project with Understall Contracting Company. Again, this is a planned appropriation for fiscal year 2023. The work to be done consists of the construction of approximately 11,000 feet of 12 to 48 inch diameter sewers and the rehabilitation of another 900 feet of combined sewers using CIPP methods. The purpose of this project is to reduce basement backups and alleviate wet weather surcharging and overland flooding of the combined sewer system. This is a partial and supplemental appropriation request. The planned supplemental appropriation of $2.4 million, as well as an additional 300. We're actually asking for 300 additional. That was not planned. This will bring the total appropriation of $6.7 million and will fully fund the project. The additional appropriation covers the cost due. There were substantial utility relocations with putting in these large diameter sewers that were going to drain to the detention basins. And a lot of times those sewers have to be moved into the streets, the utilities need to be moved into the streets, which requires additional pavement replacement. And that's the need for the additional $300,000. Project is ongoing and is scheduled to be completed by the end of the year. Any questions? All right. The next item is the Bissell and Lame Wastewater Treatment Facility Fluidized Bed Incinerator Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter into a construction contract. The work to be done consists of the construction of fluidized bed incinerators at the Bissell and Lime wastewater treatment facilities to include redundant sludge acceptance systems and solids handling system improvements. The purpose of this project is a long-term solution for solids handling at these treatment plants and being utilized by our other treatment plants. The this was a design build project. The district had 3 proposers for this project. The successful proposer on this project was Kokosik Plocker LLC. This is a partial funding request. There'll be future supplemental appropriations planned for fiscal year 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28, providing for a total appropriation for this project of $900 million. This individual appropriation in fiscal year 23 is equal to what's in the budget, which is $101 million. We are planning to fund this project utilizing both state SRF loans and WIFIA loans through the federal government. We do have a presentation that kind of covers the process we went in acquiring this project, and that's Brad Nevoy. He's my manager of design for the engineering department. So at this time, if you want to follow along, there'll be a presentation in your packet and on your screen, and I'll turn it over to Brad at this time.
Thanks, Rich. As Rich mentioned, I'm going to talk about the Bissell and Lee May Wastewater Treatment Facility Fluidized Bed Incinerator Project, or FBI project, we often call it. Slide 2, please. The agenda item that you have today does 2 things. It appropriates $101 million out of an estimated total of $900 million for the project. It also enters into a contract with Kokosik Plocker LLC. The picture on the right is renderings of the 2 facilities that would be built. Slide 3, please. Some background on the project. Rich mentioned this is a long-term project. This project was originally conceived in 2011. We did a comprehensive solids plan to deal with the solids that are left over after we process the sewage at our treatment plants. Ultimately, the recommendation was to build 2 new incinerator facilities, one at our Bissell and one at our Lee May treatment plant. Those would then handle the solids from several of our remote treatment plants around the county. In 2016, the EPA actually enacted the Sewage Sludge Incinerator Rule, or the SSI rule. That did 2 things. Put in place stricter air emission standards on those incinerators, and it made it very difficult to invest in the old technology. It was to encourage the replacement of incinerators. In 2018, the district secured a consent decree modification from the EPA due to this new regulation being in place. That allowed us to push back our LMRDP tunnel, which in turn limited the impact on our customers, our ratepayers. The decision was made to do design build on the project for a couple different reasons, which I'll talk about here later in the presentation. And in 2019, we hired an owner's representative, which is the Black & Veatch team Rich is going to discuss later. The Black & Veatch team helped us come up with a defined design build procurement, and we started that process with the pre-qualification of the ISS, or incinerator system supplier, in 2021. We issued RFQs for the design build teams in July of 21, and then we wrapped up the selection here in January of 23. Next slide, please. A little bit of background on design build. Design build is different than the typical design bid build projects that you see a lot from us. Design build provides certain advantages, especially on a project like this, being somewhat unique. We don't build incinerators every day, and it's a highly technical project, so it requires special expertise. We do have certain restrictions that limit when we can incorporate design build. The first one is the Missouri law that was passed in 2011. That's actually specific to MSD and where we can use design build. We also have several internal rules. We amended our charter in 2012 to allow design build, our purchasing ordinance in 2017, and we passed a resolution in 2018 to deal with stipends, or the payments that are made for the non-winning proposals. We also have MWBE and workforce procedures and a design build procedure that we follow while implementing design build. Next slide, please. The design build selection process, it starts out with an RFQ or request for qualifications. We advertise those with the base scope and the project requirements. Teams then submit their qualifications and we review those. Ultimately, here we shortlisted 3 teams to move forward in the process, and we give them a RFP or a request for proposal. That provides them an early scope for the project between 10 and 30%. We give them the detailed requirements of the project. We lay out a series of confidential meetings where they can work with MSD on refining their solution, and we outline the stipend that would be paid for non-winning proposals. The proposals ultimately get submitted, and then they get evaluated like any other construction or design project for MWBE and workforce. Next slide, please. The design build proposals get evaluated really in 2 pieces, the technical proposal and then the price proposal. The technical proposal, or the quality aspect of the proposal, is evaluated first, and the scores of those proposals then are published, so they are independent from the price proposal. Next, the price proposals are opened, and those are scored as well, and the 2 scores get added together, and the highest scoring proposal then is brought to the board to enter into a contract with the design build team. It should be mentioned the design process continues throughout the project. We're at about a 60% design right now. The design will continue to be refined and completed during the project, along with the construction and the commissioning right over turning the project over to MSD. Next slide, please. Any discussion of this project would not be complete without the project cost discussion. We've seen significant changes throughout the life of the procurement. In 2021, we asked the owner's representative to provide us an initial estimate for the project right as we were starting the procurement. That estimate was $575 million. In June of 22, we asked the design build teams to provide us an early conceptual estimate for the project to help us program our funds. We mentioned to them there's no commitment to this estimate. It was very early in the project, but we were already seeing the unstable market conditions concerning workforce and availability of workforce. Commodity prices were jumping all over, and equipment cost and the availability of equipment became a real problem. Ultimately, we opened the price proposals. We actually opened 2 price proposals that day. We opened a base price proposal that included the entire scope of the project. And we also opened an alternative price proposal, which removed one of the incineration units from our Bissell treatment plant. The base price proposals ranged from 16 to 59% higher than the estimate we received in June of 2022. The alternative prices were anywhere from 12 to 53% higher than our June of 22 estimate. 2 of the proposals were very closely grouped at the bottom there. Next slide, please. We implemented several things along the way during the procurement to help control costs. The first thing we did, we incorporated escalation, de-escalation language. This is really to share the risk of the inflationary cost with the design build team and MSD. We wanted to make sure that this new language was fair to both sides, measurable. We had both commodity-based items where the government sets indices on the items. Major equipment purchases is a very heavy equipment project, and prices are documented at the basis of bid. This is the second time we used language like this. We actually used it in the Merrimack treatment plant expansion that we talked about earlier. We also did some scope adjustments to the project along the way. We removed any non-essential scope items out of the project, and we implemented the base price and alternative price that I mentioned earlier. The agenda item you see today is based on the alternative price that was submitted. We also continue in post-award negotiations. Negotiations are part of the design-build process. We actually have a meeting later today to continue to refine and get that cost down as much as we can.
Is that with all bidders?
No, it's just with the selected bidder, the one that was awarded.
But just to add to that, the stipends that go to the other two will allow ideas that maybe came from the other two proposers that could help cut costs. So by paying that stipend and paying them for their work product, that allows us to utilize that in working with the proposer we have.
Next slide, please. This project has some major environmental benefits. The upgraded technology that's going to be incorporated with this is really required to meet the new regulations. The future permit limits are significantly lower than the current limits allow. This results in improved air quality. The current facilities meet or exceed the current air standards, but the new facilities are a leap forward in technology, reducing air emissions by at least 70% overall the project. We also see improved water quality. The biosolids are turned into stable ash that then is hauled to our landfill that MSD owns. It's much more cost effective. The new equipment is much more energy efficient than our 50-year-old plus incinerators that are existing in place. It does. The existing incinerators are called multiple hearth incinerators. They use gas to get the fire burning, and then as we burn the solids, they help make a little bit of their own fuel, but it's supplemented with gas. There's not, no. We looked at that in this project, but the payback just wasn't there. This project, the new incinerators work more autonomous. They kind of, once you get them going, they should require much less gas or no gas to keep them burning. They burn at a much hotter rate. Yeah, this is it's hard to describe. It's like a boiling pot. Instead of water, this is a boiling pot of hot air and sand. And as you drop the solids in, it breaks them up and burns them really hot. The high temperatures make it a much cleaner process. I'm sorry, what standard for the cost, you mean?
Sorry. Yeah, what was the, it just strikes me if we're creating energy, there's a way to recapture and reuse it for other purposes.
So we valued the cost of the additional infrastructure that would be required to recover that heat versus what we would get out of the beneficial cost savings that you would get out of recovering that.
But we haven't given up on that. There's a lot of cost reduction as you saw these increases.
Right.
The facilities are being built to accommodate things like, help me out, not heat capture.
Energy recovery is what
Energy recovery, the heat recovery, and using that heat for other purposes. It's designed that you can expand the facilities to do heat recovery facilities. We're just not putting them into place right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you. The last thing I'll add, it's been estimated we'll create about 275 new jobs during the construction period. And long-term, we're going to have some high-tech jobs that this has created to help us run these incinerator units long-term. Next slide, please. Finally, some background on the proposal and received from the Kokosing-Plocker team and the team itself. I mentioned the proposal really comes in two pieces, or it's evaluated in two pieces. The Kokosing-Plocker proposal scored the highest on the technical or the quality aspect. In addition, it also was the lowest on the price. So it had the highest score on both those components. The Kokosing-Plocker team has built 6 similar facilities, FBI facilities in the last 15 years. Kokosing is probably a new name to you. They're a third-generation family-owned construction firm. They're based in Ohio. They're one of the largest contractors in the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic region. They have a long history working with Suez, which is now known as Veolia, on FBI projects as well. Plocker Construction is a major piece of the Kokosing Plocker team. You've seen them for years on several large projects Rich talked about earlier. They're currently working on our Merrimack treatment plant expansion. And Crawford Murphy Tilley is the lead design firm, or CMT. They've got a long history with MSD, and they have a large office here in St. Louis. I'll now open it up to any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Very well done. All right, our next item is also the Bissell and Lime fluidized bed incinerator is for the design. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to amend our design contract with Black & Veatch for the engineering design services, the preparation of 30% design documents. The purpose of this project, again, is to rebuild our incinerators at our Bissell and Lime plants. Black & Veatch will also provide advisory services during the construction and startup after this selection is completed. Advisory services include reviewing the design build progress, ensure the project stays on schedule within budget. The planned construction cost again for this project is $900 million. This appropriation for design services is equal to that in the budget supplement. This appropriation is $8,600,000. This contract is for the 5th year of a planned multi-year project. In other words, Black & Veatch will be on through the construction of the project. Kind of an update on their MWBE progress to date. There was an initial commitment by Black & Veatch of 25%. For this amendment, they are anticipating about 27% participation from their MBE subpartners, providing right now currently at 21% towards meeting that 25% goal. Are there any questions on this? All right, the next item is the Bissell Coldwater, Missouri Merrimack Public I&I Reduction Contract F. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of the rehabilitation of approximately 61,000 feet of sewers from 6 to 24 inch using the cured in place pipe method, the rehabilitation of 76 manholes and 1,438 service connection and 18 point repairs. The purpose of this project is to reduce inflow and infiltration in the Bissell Coldwater, Missouri watershed. The district received 2 bids on this project. The low bid was from In Situ Farm Technologies. The bid was above our design estimate. This appropriation of $2,360,000 and then an additional appropriation in fiscal year 2024 of $2,740,000 will bring the total appropriation to $5,100,000. In Situ Farm is committed to just over 20% minority and women participation. On this particular project, there's a goal of 10% minority and 10% women. This project is the requirement of the project being funded using low interest loans through the state revolving fund in the state of Missouri. Are there any questions? Okay. Next item is the Greenbrier number 2 pump station elimination. It appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter into construction contract. The work to be done consists of construction of approximately 928 feet of 8-inch sewers, the abandonment and filling of 1 pump station and detention pipe, and the abandonment of approximately 800 linear feet of sanitary force main and appurtenances. The purpose of this project is to eliminate the Greenbrier number 2 pump station, which has exceeded its useful life. The district received 6 bids on this project. The low bid was from Gershenson Construction Company. The bid was below our design estimate, and our appropriation of $390,000 is below the budget for the project. Gershenson committed to just over 17% African American MBE participation, which meets our 17% goal for the project. All right, the next item is the pump station man lift replacement project. This appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of the removal and replacement of existing man lifts at 8 pump stations, including new code-compliant machine rooms, penthouse, and roofing modifications. The purpose of this project is to replace existing man lifts, which are outdated and non-compliant with current building codes. The district received only one bid on this project. We have 8 plan holders, and we did have a pre-bid on the project. The low bid was received from Cordy Luthjohn Contractors. The bid that we did receive was well below our designer's estimate. We did quiz some of the other plan holders. This project's at 8 different locations, involves a lot of different equipment, procurement over a long period of time, a lot of lead times. And we found that because of that, there wasn't quite the interest. We're recommending, since we're below our estimate, designer's estimate on the project, it is above the appropriation of $4.75 million, is above our budget of $4 million. But I want to keep in mind, over the last year and a half, our equipment prices have significantly gone up, and our budget was set prior to that. Cordy Luthjohn has committed to 19% MBE participation, which is meets our 17% African American goal. Are there any questions? All right, the next item is the infrastructure repair rehabilitation contract B. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of the rehabilitation of approximately 56,000 feet of sanitary sewers 6 to 42 inch in diameter, utilizing the cured in place pipe method. The purpose of this project is to reduce inflow and infiltration and rehabilitate older, deteriorated sanitary sewers throughout the district. The sewers identified for rehabilitation are generally identified through our annual CMOM inspection program that's required by the consent decree and performed by our operations group. The district received 2 bids on this project. The low bid was from SAK Construction. The bid was above our design estimate, and our appropriation of $3,400,000 is above our original budget for the project. On our cured in place project, we have seen an increase, and again, primarily that's due to the resins utilized in the cured in place pipe method. I've had seen a large increase to that. It's a petroleum-based resin, obviously impacted by the increase of costs in petroleum. So we have seen those go up. They were stable and very good for years and years, and this is probably the first time we've seen the increase on these cured in place projects. Are there any questions? Oh, again, this project also is funded through the state of Missouri, which requires a MBE goal of 10% and a WBE goal of 10%. SAK is committed to meeting that goal with just under 21% MBE participation, M&WBE participation. Next project is the Dearborn Drive Storm Sewer Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. This work to be done consists of construction of approximately 360 linear feet of storm sewers, 15 to 24 inch in diameter. The purpose of the project is to alleviate yard flooding at 1603 and 1605 Dearborn in the city of Warson Woods. The district received 4 bids. The low bid was from Gershenson Construction. The bid was below our design estimate, and our appropriation of $205,000 is below our budget for the project. Gershenson is committed to just over 17% MBE African American, which meets the 17% goal for the project. Next item is the Stormwater Infrastructure Repair Rehabilitation Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of the rehabilitation of approximately 28,000 feet of storm sewers from 8 to 72 inch diameter using the cured in place pipe method. The purpose of this project is to rehabilitate older, damaged, and deteriorated storm sewer project throughout the district boundaries. These projects too are identified through our stormwater CMON program performed by our operations group. The district received 2 bids on this project. One of the higher of the 2 bids was deemed non-responsive due to submission error. So essentially our low bid from SAK Construction was responsive. The bid was above our design estimate, and it was above our original budget. We were recommending proceeding. The appropriation is for $4.4 million. Our budget is $3 million. We have funds within our stormwater operations funds to fund the project. So we're recommending to move forward with the project. Again, I talked about earlier, we've seen an increased price in the resin costs for particularly on large diameter sewers where the CIPP liners are thicker and utilize more of the resin materials. SAK is committed, apologize, I keep forgetting, 17.32% MBE participation will reach the 17% goal. All right. Next item, this is an item we'll be requesting introduction and adoption at next Thursday's meeting. It is the emergency repair number 72. This appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter into emergency construction contract with Fred M. Luth and Association. The work to be done consists of the excavation and repair of a collapsed combined sewer and appurtenances. The purpose of this project is repair and replace a sewer that has failed and associated pavement collapse with the cave-in. There's 11 by 14 arch sewer that's below this collapse, a 36 inch diameter water main, and another 6-inch diameter water main that are in close proximity. The street is undermining around the sewers, and the sewer is located in the middle of Goodfellow Boulevard, just west of West Florissant, so it's a major thoroughfare. Based upon the recommendation of my staff, they asked Brian to declare this emergency on March 10th, and contractor Fred M. Luth was selected and immediately mobilized. The estimated cost for this project is $600,000. There is a document showing the location of this project. Let's show the other one first, kind of show Ashley. All right, kind of the location. As you can see, on the left and the right, we're just, I guess, south of West Florissant on Goodfellow. If you go to the right, the 2 blue arrows, that's essentially the location of the large arch sewer that is down below. That's not collapsed. There's a green line coming to the right towards the red dot. That's where the collapse is at. It's a 21-inch diameter combined sewer that connects to the large sewer. That is what is collapsed. And so we're going to relocate that 21-inch combined sewer. That's the line in red there. Also located right above where the red dot is a 36-inch and a 6-inch water main that we're dealing with in order to excavate down and make this new connection. You go to the next page, kind of gives you some drawings of, or some pictures of the work out there. You can see the pavement collapse on the far left lower corner. You can see it's at least dropped significantly to 6 inches to a foot in that area. We immediately kept traffic off that area, and some of the work that's taking place right now, we've got the shoring system on the lower right that's being brought in to start the excavation. The void that you see in the far right upper, that void has been filled to kind of stabilize things. And the work that's progressing right now, we're working with city water to cap the 6-inch main, which will actually be removed to allow us to excavate and to shore the 36-inch to hold it in place while we excavate down. We anticipate the entire project to take anywhere from a month to 2 months to complete. So the work is.
I'm sorry. Is there any idea where this undermining, how this happen?
Once we get it opened, we're going to get a clearer look as to, where it originated from, whether the sewer happened first or whether there was a water main leak. Alan, I know we try to document whatever we see as we go down.
If there's a water leak, though, I mean, is there anything we can do about it to prevent that in the future?
I don't know, Alan, was the main actually leaking? I don't know, is Alan still there?
So currently, it looks like the 36-inch water main is in good shape. The 6-inch main, I don't know if it's the main leaking or a bunch of service connections leaking that's following the trench down. The system, the infrastructure in both areas is, thank you, the infrastructure is older in those areas. So we're having a difficult time, city water's having a difficult time isolating that 6-inch water main right now. That's who we're working with because we really want to not only protect the 6, but we need to protect that 36-inch water main for sure.
Now, if it does come back as a water main issue, do we get any assistance from the water company, St. Louis City Water? Since
We Rich, I don't know if you want that to be me or, we have notified City Water, we're working with City Water, and we're both documenting as we dig down.
It is something we always documented, but it's kind of the chicken and egg. It's very difficult to determine whether one happened before the other. That's the difficult part.
Greg, a little more on that. So what Rich said, it's hard to determine. We do have the conversations. Sometimes the agreement is you fix yours, we'll fix ours. It just depends on what they find when they dig down. So we've had a pretty good relationship with City Water when this occurs. If it's obviously in the past been their issue, they've taken care of the cost. So we'll, which in the same way, obviously have the ability to say, hey, your sewer collapsed and now it's caused a water main. So it's just us working through and seeing what's there. I think I'd put a big emphasis on what Rich and Alan said. Sometimes it is just very, very hard to tell.
Thank you.
All right, our next two projects are both for engineering design contracts for stormwater projects where we've received funding through ARPA grants through the state of Missouri. These two engineering items, I am requesting introduction and adoption. There's some time constraints on the ARPA funding. The funding has to be expended by the end of 2026. When you have to design, acquire easements on projects, that's going to put a pretty tight schedule on us. And the projects, the stormwater projects that we're designing are located in creeks. So the sooner we can get out there and get our survey crews out there before a lot of the vegetation gets there heavily this summer will help us as well. So I am requesting that introduction and adoption on these next two items. Overall, we're receiving about $22.5 million in ARPA funding. There's a potential we could receive some more as it goes along, and we've setting up these contracts to allow us for some further design. And $5 million of that is for stormwater. For sanitary sewers on projects we're currently doing. So these will be for the general service agreement for design of ARPA projects contract A and B. This actions will appropriate funds and authorize staff to enter design contract with contract A with Intuition and Logic Engineering for $800,000. That's below our original budget of $1.3 million. They'll be designing two projects. Contract B is with M3 Engineering Group. That contract is for $900,000, again below our estimate of $1.3 million for the design. They'll be designing three projects. Again, the projects consist of the design and preparation and construction documents for multiple stormwater street bank stabilization projects. The projects for the Intuition and Logic are the Larimore Park, the Birmingham Court channel improvements, which has an estimated construction cost of $1.9 million, and the Mailing Creek Bank Stabilization, St. Louis Place to Florissant Road, which has approximate construction costs of $900,000. On the M3 contract, they're designing 3 projects: the Delwood Creek Bank Stabilization to West Florissant to Hudson Road, which is a construction cost of approximately $440,000. The Delwood Creek Bank Stabilization, which is just under $1 million project, and the Ferguson Branch Bank Stabilization to Church to Darst, which is another project just under $1 million. And these projects will be moving to design. We do have a number of projects that were receiving ARPA funds that were in the process prior to us receiving the funds. So we'll be have cost sharing on those projects with ARPA funds, and the construction for those projects will come sooner than these. Those will come in fiscal year 24, and hopefully we can get started on the construction. So some major projects that, if it weren't for ARPA, we wouldn't be able to complete. So again, it was nice to be able to utilize that funding. Are there any questions? All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to take kind of the last group all at once. There are 6 projects where we're authorized the staff to enter into agreement with 5 separate municipalities for stormwater expenditures from the OMCI reimbursement program. I'm going to provide you with a description, provide the municipality and the fund that the funds were going to come from. The funding was already appropriated earlier this fiscal year for these reimbursement programs, and these municipalities are basically doing projects and then seeking reimbursement for those funds. Again, the ordinance is authorized to enter in intergovernmental agreements for eligible stormwater expenditures within a specific OMCI. The eligible stormwater expenditures include storm sewer and inlet construction, drainage improvements, stream bank stabilization, erosion, clearing under bridges and cleaning detention basin, stormwater planning or engineering costs, and other stormwater-related expenses determined to be appropriate by the district. The first action is an agreement with the City of Ladue for their Robin Hill McKnight Lane Bank Stabilization Project. The city includes about $855 of storm channel renovation and bank stabilization. Their estimated cost for this project is $1,750,000. We'll be reimbursing them $310,206 from the Deer Creek OMCI. The second project is also from the Deer Creek OMCI. It's an agreement with the City of Glendale. The City of Glendale will be performing a stormwater master plan. The city will contract for engineering service to prepare a citywide stormwater master plan. The estimated cost for the master plan is $178,300. They're requesting reimbursement of $45,046. Again, these stormwater master plans performed by these municipalities is very beneficial to the district as well. It saves us from having to do that planning work, and that municipality provides a listing of projects that we're able to put into our prioritization system and have available should we ever be able to get funding available to do the projects. Next project is from the Deer Creek OMCI. It's an agreement with the City of Rock Hill. City of Rock Hill is also performing a stormwater master plan. They'll contract for engineering services to prepare a citywide comprehensive master plan. Their estimated cost of this master plan is $168,100, and the district's reimbursing them $96,906 for that master plan. Next one is a Deer Creek reimbursement. It's agreement with the City of Creve Coeur. The City of Creve Coeur is performing the South New Balance Road to Tarrytown Creek Bank Stabilization Project. The city's improvement includes 675 linear feet of storm channel and bank stabilization. The estimated cost of the project is $380,000, and this agreement provides for that reimbursement of $380,000. The next one is also a separate agreement with the city of Creve Coeur for their Alden Lane stormwater conveyance improvements. This amount, the city's improvement included approximately 70 linear feet of storm sewers, and the estimated cost of the project is $67,000. And this agreement provides for reimbursement up to $67,000. And then the next one is out of the Sugar Creek OMCI, and it's agreement with the city of Kirkwood. The agreement with the city of Kirkwood, the city is contracting engineering services prepare a citywide comprehensive stormwater master plan. This agreement provides reimbursement up to $60,000 from the Sugar Creek. We will also be taking $45,000 from the Deer Creek OMCI and $45,000 from the Gravois OMCI. Kirkwood kind of sits on a hill and stormwater drains in 3 different directions. So they're taking advantage of OMCI funds in 3 sub-districts to perform their master plan. So a total of about $150,000 being reimbursed to the city of Kirkwood. And then finally, a Gravois Creek OMCI reimbursement to the city of Oakland. The city of Oakland is performing the East Madison Avenue drainage improvements. The city will contract for design and construction services to include curb inlets, storm sewers, and curbing. The estimated cost of construction for the project is $362,867, and we're going to be reimbursing up to $16,165, which is available to them. And that concludes that lengthy agenda.
All right, thank you, sir. There is no other business. Next tentative meeting date is May 2nd, 2023. Can I get a motion for adjournment? Thank you.
Call over to the 289th meeting of the Finance Committee. Get a roll call, please.
Yep, the record will note that all trustees are present, including Trustee Fair, who's online.
Motion to approve the minutes for the prior meeting.
So moved.
All right, next item is the fiscal year 24 budget presentation.
Good morning, trustees. We're here today to present the district's strategic business and operating plan and our preliminary budget for FY24. Next slide, please. The items that we'll cover today include an overview of the strategic business plan, the FY24 preliminary budget. I will cover the operating budget, and Rich will talk to you about the capital budget. Then the last step will be for me to talk to you about the remaining schedule for the budgeting process and to address any questions. Certainly, if you have questions as we go along through the presentation, please feel free to ask. Next slide, please. Next, I'll turn it over to Brian, who's going to talk about the strategic business plan.
Thank you, Marion. The strategic business plan in its entirety is located on pages 24 through 52 of your budget document. We do the business plan. It is required by charter as indicated on the, go back one. There we go. Okay, is required by the charter, a 5-year plan. We use a 5-year rolling plan. So every year that we move forward, year 2s through 5 move up, they're reviewed, and we add an end year. So it's a continuous rolling plan. Now you can switch. There are 4 goals in the plan. These have remained consistent for a while. Deliver consistent, high-quality customer service, comply with all legal and regulatory requirements and schedules, minimize customer rate increases, and be accountable to the St. Louis community. It's a good summation of our charter requirements. You go to the next one. To accomplish those goals, we have 6 strategies: inform and educate, partner to build stakeholder understanding, manage district's costs and revenues to optimize financial impacts, integrate and improve the business and district's business processes, promote appropriate standards through proactive regulatory and legislative involvement, address customer and regulatory needs through a comprehensive infrastructure management plan, finally create a learning and business-oriented culture based on competency and accountability. If you look at the plan in detail that's in your budget documents, you'll find that each one of these strategies has 2 to 5 objectives, and then each objective has a milestone for over the next 5 years. These are what we monitor. They also, doing a 5-year plan, allow us to plan ahead and also know what's coming up in the future. Feel free to look at those. If you have any questions then or later, please feel free to ask. Any questions about the business plan itself? Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Marion.
Thank you, Brian. Next slide, Stephanie. So I'm going to talk to you about some elements of the FY24 budget. So just starting off, this slide depicts that the district is proposing a balanced budget as directed by our charter. You'll see that our expenditures total $947.8 million, and our revenues comprise the same amount. The components of each element of the revenue budget and the expense budget will be covered in additional detail as we move through the presentation this morning. Next slide, please. So some key points with respect to the preliminary budget. Our general fund budget includes about a 1% or $1.5 million increase in personnel, and that's primarily related to salaries, which are projected to increase 2% or about $1.5 million. There was not an increase in terms of the number of budgeted personnel. That number was kept at 1,020 FTEs. I will provide some additional information regarding the general fund budget later in the presentation. There were $2.7 million in incremental expenses that are tied to the strategic business plan that we added to the base of the budget as well. Our utilities increased by about $700,000 or 4%. Also, our contractual services budgets increased 11% or $6.2 million, excluding any incremental items that we added. There was a 5% overall increase in the operating budget, and that is about $11.4 million. Next, with regards to our capital program, the budget for it is about $562 million. The bulk of that relates to wastewater projects. So $538 million of the 562 are pertain to wastewater projects, with the remaining $23 million relating to stormwater projects. To fund that capital plan, the district plans to issue about $278 million of bonds. The remainder of the capital program will be covered by PAYGO or cash funded to the tune of about $128 million. There are about $23 million worth of taxes that'll be used for capital projects. We have other income sources, which are typically investment income. That's going to total about $9 million that'll be used to fund the capital program. And then finally, we'll use about $124 million of fund balance to pay for the capital program as well. The budget was developed to align with our 2019 Rate Commission report. That report identified both our revenue and our expenses for the time period of FY21 through FY24. Next slide, please. As shown earlier, the district's revenues are projected to be $948 million approximately. The largest portion of our revenues, to no surprise, is our wastewater user charges. They're about $470 million, or about half of our revenues come from that source. The next largest source of revenue is the revenue bonds that we intend to issue to fund the capital program, $278 million, or roughly 29% of the revenue budget. We then have taxes of about $46 million, which is about 5% of the budget. Our investments and other income is estimated to generate about $15 million of revenue, which is about 1.5% of that budget. And as I mentioned earlier, we will be using some fund balances, about $139 million of fund balances, or about 15% of the revenue budget. Next slide, please. In terms of our rate adjustments for this fiscal year, in FY24, the estimated cost for a customer using about 6 CCFs of water, it's projected to be $62.59 a month. That's a 3.7% increase over our FY23 rates for the same usage. Next slide, please. Our total preliminary district expenses are projected to be, again, $948 million. The largest portion of our expenditures is our capital program, which is, we're budgeting $562 million. That's 59% of our total expenditures involve our capital program.
Marion?
Yes, sir.
On our revenues, what were our revenues in 23?
We have not closed out 23 yet, but overall for wastewater revenues, we had budgeted, I think it's around $440 million for wastewater. We're projecting that we will exceed that by, I think about right now, by about $5 million or so. So most of our revenues come from that source.
So you're showing a 470?
Yeah, we have other items like investment income. There's some other miscellaneous income items that we get as well. We're projected to exceed our revenue budget by about $6 million or so.
For this year?
For FY23, yes. Okay, so going back to the preliminary budget for expenses. Again, as I mentioned, our capital program is the largest item there. Of that $562 million, the vast majority of it is for wastewater projects, about $538 million, with $23 million being for stormwater projects. The next largest portion is our operating budget, and I'll go through some additional detail on that. That comprises about $247 million, or 26% of our budgeted expenses. And then we have our debt service budget, which is projected to be $139 million, or 15% of the total expenditures for FY24. Next slide, please. So this slide provides you with some data for our general fund budget by department. FY24 compared to FY23. I'm going to highlight some of the larger changes that you see there. Certainly, if you need additional detail, please let me know, and we will get that to you. So I'll start off with our Secretary Treasurer's Office. You'll see a roughly $2 million increase. That is primarily due to $1 million for bond authorization and stormwater elections that will take place in in April of 2024. So we have to pay, of course, to put items on the ballot. That typically costs us about $1 million. So that's an item that you'll see that was not in FY23, that's in the 24 budget. There's also an increase in professional services of about $800,000, which related to cost of issuance for our WIFIA borrowing. That's a federal program that we were able to obtain some funding for that provides low interest cost funding for us. But unlike a traditional bond issue where the proceeds allow you to pay cost of issuance out of those bond proceeds, with WIFIA, you have to fund that up front. And so we put $800,000 in the budget to fund that cost of issuance. The executive director's budget is showing an increase of about $1.2 million, or about 16.9%. That is a little bit misleading because that's due to a movement of one department. We moved our Market Street buildings, security and facilities budget. It used to be in finance. We moved that to the executive director's office. That amount that we moved was approximately $900,000. The remaining $300,000 increase in that particular budget was due to an increase in contractual services. So with that being said, you'll see for finance, we're showing a $531,000 decrease in our budget. Again, that's because we moved $900,000 from our budget to the executive director's budget. Absent that movement, you would have saw a $300,000 increase, roughly $370,000 increase in the finance budget. And most of the increase in the finance budget would have been due to our professional services budget going up by about $340,000. Most of that relates to our billing system. We contract out with a third party for our billing system. We're seeing some increases there. And also we're seeing increases in the amount that we pay our collection professionals, our law firms and collection agencies that collect delinquent debt on our behalf. Okay, moving on, in IT, information technologies, there's an increase of about $1 million, or 5.5%. That is due to $490,000 amount for computer supplies and an increase in telephone and communication equipment of another $450,000. Our operations budget is projected to increase by $5.7 million, or 4.6%. $2.1 million of that is for supplies, things like chemicals that are projected to increase about $1.2 million. We also have increases in machinery and equipment, fuel, construction and building supplies. Those items comprise about a $600,000 increase. The contractual services budget and operations also increased by about $1.8 million. Most of that was for machinery and equipment services. We have to maintain that equipment. Also, HVAC services increased. Those two items are about $900,000 of that $1.8 million increase. We also are projecting about $125,000 increase in other governmental fees. Those are levy district assessments that we have to pay. And then finally, we are projecting about $1 million increase in personnel, which consists of salaries and benefits. And our defined contribution plan is projected to increase, or I'm sorry, defined contribution plan in that area, those expenditures are projected to increase by $1.5 million, but that'll be offset by a $600,000 decrease in the defined benefit plan. So what we're seeing with respect to our pension plans, as we hire new employees in, they are placed in that defined contribution plan. When employees retire that have been here for a while, they're in the defined benefit plan. So for the next set of budgets that you'll see a swing where our defined contribution budget's going up, but the defined benefit plan budget is going down. Finally, the last thing I have is the rate commission budget is projected to decrease by $702,000. That is because in FY24, the current rate commission proceeding will be completed, and there will not be a significant, if any, amount spent for rate commission expenditures. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what this slide depicts is our current forecast compared to what was projected during the 2019 rate commission proceedings. During the 29 proceedings, we budget expenditures for a 4-year time period from FY21 through FY24. And so I'm going to cover a couple of the variances that you'll see. The largest one is with our wastewater service charges. When compared to what we projected to the rate commission and where we think we're going to end up, we're showing a $105 million decrease in revenues. The bulk of that is due to declines in the billable volumes that we're seeing. With respect to expenses, our expenses are about 5% favorable when compared to the rate commission projections that we had. And in total, that's about $161 million favorable there. Bond proceeds are projected to be unfavorable by $151 million. That's a little bit misleading because we don't budget for refundings that we do. Of that $151 million, about $80 million of that is refunding bonds that we issued, which allowed us to refinance debt. So although that shows as unfavorable per se, that is actually a good thing because we're saving money long-term on debt service. The rest of that amount that was left, about another $71 million or so, those were additional bonds that we issued. Given the low interest rate environment that we were in, we thought it was prudent to lock in more of that low interest rate financing for our capital program. And it's a good thing that we did because we've seen rates increase significantly since the issuance of those bonds. Next slide, please. So the next portion of the presentation, I'm going to turn over to Rich. He's going to provide you with some detail on our capital program.
Real quick.
Yes, sure.
So I noticed early on that we're going to dip the balance by 138.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. So our fund balance is basically, if you think of it as in terms of an accumulated savings account, and so we use that balance to help to pay for capital programs, so that we don't have to go out and borrow additional funds. So that's basically a cash-funded portion of the capital program.
What's the balance, and in what portion of the 1 million? Sorry, 138 million.
Give me 1 second. I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, I will come back to that question. Let me look it up, and I'll turn it over to Rich, and then at the end, I'll give you the answer to your question. Thank you.
All right, good morning, trustees again. Today, I'll be providing a summary of the district's proposed 2024 capital improvement program, or we refer to as our CRP. Excuse me. You received a copy of the preliminary CRP. So you get two documents, the operating budget and then the capital budget, which is separate just for the program. Within that document, you actually provide specific details by project of the appropriation that we have planned, a map showing the location, and a brief description of the project and where the funding is coming from. Today's presentation, I'm just going to provide a breakdown that will summarize the different aspects of the program, kind of different categories, kind of what I call slices and dices the CRP up into different pieces. What I'm covering today in summary, next fiscal year, starting in July, is the projects I bring to you for appropriation, whether it be design or construction, monthly at our program management meeting. So it's a big book, so we break it up for over 12 months. So. Next slide, please. Kind of a summary. One more. I'm sorry, go back one more. There you go. Thank you. Again, there's a total of 137 new projects planned for fiscal year 24, and there are 4 projects that we are not anticipating getting completed in fiscal year 24 for a total of 141 projects. As Marion indicated, the overall budget is approximately $561 million. Almost $440 million of that is the new projects that we have. If you look at the breakdown, the number of appropriations between engineering construction on the wastewater side is pretty equal. We have more stormwater construction, 24 versus 9 new design projects we'll be bringing to you in fiscal year 24. Next slide, please. As you can see from the overall almost $540 million budget, the majority of those projects are from the wastewater side. 96% of the overall budget CRP is for wastewater, with 4% going to stormwater. Again, 104 projects for wastewater and 33 projects for stormwater. A number of those 104 projects that we have there, a number of them are supplemental appropriations to ongoing construction. Had several of those this morning at the program management meeting. Next slide, please. This chart kind of just breaks down the wastewater program as to where the projects are located. Again, a total appropriation of about 104 projects that I'll be bringing to you with a budget of about $516 million. 46% of the appropriation, or $237 million, was work at our treatment plants. And obviously, 2 of those projects I discussed earlier, the Lower Merrimack plant still has another appropriation, and obviously the project for the fluidized bed incinerators. We have 7 appropriations in the city. There are 3% of the overall wastewater expenditures are district-wide. That includes a lot of the rehab projects that I bring to you and some of the district-wide CCTV, those types of contracts. And then finally, 49%. Again, there's still a number, 62 appropriations for sanitary sewer projects that we're performing in the county. Included with that would be appropriations for the Lower Merrimack Tunnel, which is ongoing, and then sanitary relief projects that we're still doing to comply with the consent decree. Next slide, please. Where our funds come from the CRP, obviously, again, since most of the projects are wastewater projects, 93% of our funds for the CRP are coming from the sanitary replacement funds, just around $500 million. The remaining is divided between our stormwater funds. Those are the operations fund, the O&M tax that generates funding for doing rehabilitation and point repairs and repairs on the stormwater system. 2% of the OMCI funds, those are the projects that we utilize to do projects, the only funding we have for stormwater project right now. And there are 3% of the program from the general fund. These are part of the green infrastructure program, some of our district-wide vendor services, and some of our data collection, such as CCTV and stream monitoring, and then our radar rainfall projects. Next slide, please. Discuss the OMCIs a little bit. Our revenue from the OMCIs is anticipated to be about $10.1 million. Again, this isn't across the entire district. It's in 7 specific OMCI taxing districts. 6 of the OMCIs, when we turn those taxes back on after not having a stormwater rate in 2019, we agreed to provide 50% of that funds that are generated within the municipalities in those OMCI districts back to the municipalities. It's proved to be a very good program that the contract or that the cities like. Something we're planning to implement in the new rate proposal for a district-wide revenue. Again, about 50% of those taxes then goes back to the cities for a total of $4.7 million available to the municipalities. Next slide, please. Always a discussion, how much of the program is for engineering, design, and construction. As you can see, 89% of our total appropriation is for actual construction work and 11% for engineering. And that 11% for engineering, there's a good portion of that is utilized for actual construction management. So the program has evolved since we started the consent decree back in 2012 and 13, just to kind of give you some perspective. When we started the program, we're ramping up, getting a lot of projects designed. About 31% of the program at that time was used for engineering. And now we're down to 11%. We totally anticipated that. We knew that was going to be the case. So now we're seeing the fruits of a lot of that design labor working out in the field as far as construction projects. So I don't know that you'll see it go much lower because obviously we get a stormwater rate. There's still going to be a portion of the program. We're going to be designing and also doing some contract management for those projects. So I don't anticipate that you'll see it go much lower than that, around that 10%. All right, next slide, please. I mentioned earlier we have, there were some fiscal year 23 projects, a total of 4 that we've had are going to not be able to make the fiscal year. 2 of these projects are very lengthy easement acquisitions. And then 2 of the projects we're generally working out with other entities. Could be coordination with the municipality on something they have going or getting a permit through, say, the Corps of Engineers on a project and whatnot. So those 4 projects, there's a total of about $22 million that is being moved into the fiscal year 24. And most of those dollars are as one significant project, which is a total of about 21 million is a fine screen projects. And I'll kind of give you a heads up, in the final budget supplement, that project's actually going to make the fiscal year. So that'll be lowered when we do our presentation in May. That'll be lowered to 3. All right, next item is a fiscal year 24, what we call contingency projects. These are actually projects that we have planned in fiscal year 25. We include them in the budget supplement to allow them to have a public hearing on them. If we don't have a public hearing on a project, then I can't, if there's funding available and I need to move some funding up, I don't have that ability because it doesn't have the public hearing. By including these in the fiscal year 25 project list and in the document, it allows us that should we have some additional or be able to move a project up Doesn't happen a lot. It's only a few projects a year, but we include those projects in the budget supplement to allow for that. Then finally, kind of a breakdown of the fiscal year 24 CRP by kind of project types. I'll look at a couple things. Number of projects. The one stands out there again, the sanitary sewer overflow projects required by the consent decree. Still, the bulk of our program is those types of projects. Those are the ones we've been designing, getting easements, acquisitions, and still going out and doing that. Includes some of the rehab work we're doing to reduce inflow and infiltration. If you move to the money side, you'll see that shift to the treatment plants. And obviously, I talked about that earlier, about $233 million of the program, or 43% of the budget is going to our treatment plants, primarily the fluidized bed incinerator project and the Lower Merrimack treatment plant, as well as several other projects that we have going at our treatment plants right now. So that's kind of a breakdown of the project types and where those funding and the number of projects are. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Marion to conclude.
Thank you, Rich. So I want to answer Trustee Wabi's question regarding fund balances. So with respect to the funding of our capital program, there's two sources with respect to funds. One is our general fund, which funds a small portion of the capital budget. So we were projecting that the fund balance at the beginning of FY24 in that general fund would be about $54 million. The next fund is our sanitary replacement fund, and that is the fund when we get bond proceeds, we place those bond proceeds in that fund. The general fund balance typically consists of wastewater revenue that we get. So that fund balance in the sanitary fund is projected to be about $387 million at the beginning of FY24. So in total, our fund balance between those two sources would be $440 million. Okay, so Stephanie, if you could go to the next slide, please. Next one. Okay, so with respect to our budget schedule, can you go back one, please? So we've given you an overview today of the FY24 budget, so we've completed that. We do have to publish a public hearing notice in the papers. We're going to do that later this month. At the next Finance Committee meeting, we will bring changes to the preliminary budget and discuss those changes with you so that you'll have an idea as to what you will see in the final budget document. We will hope to introduce the budget on May the 11th and have a public hearing afterwards. And then finally, in June, we will bring the budget to you for consideration of adoption. There are any additional questions that I can answer? Okay, if not, just real quick, one other quick item. We put on your tables before you a copy of our FY25 through FY28 rate commission proposal. We're currently meeting with the rate commission now to discuss that rate change proposal, but we wanted you to have that information. There's a ton of information on the website as well in the rate commission section, but I believe Brian will be giving you an overview of some of the elements that are contained in that rate change proposal. And if you have any questions, please let me know. We'd be happy to address them. Also, with respect to the budget, we kind of gave you a summary overview of the budget. I know we threw a lot of numbers out at you. If you need a detailed presentation or any additional information, please let me know and we'll get that to you. So thank you. I'll turn it over to Tim. I think he has the last item on the agenda.
I have just one more item on this meeting. That is the monthly operating portfolio report that we look at, the 4 grids. I'll just hit some highlights. I'll start in the upper left. Portfolio amount's about $728 million. That's down $11 million from last month, just because expenditures driven by capital expenditures, exceeded revenue. Yield to maturity was up 15 basis points as the new investments, little part of our portfolio that we turned over was higher than previous investments, so that went up 15 basis points. The benchmark portfolio went down almost 60 basis points, as rates have been fluctuating, very volatile, but still overall high, about 425 for the 2 to 3 year Treasury, 1 to 3 year Treasury right now. Not big changes in weighted average maturities, moving over to the upper right. This is really where we compare our balances to policy limits, and we are in compliance with our policy limits. Not big changes there. The amount we have invested in U.S. Treasuries and Fed agencies are up just a little bit, 2 to 3%. And the amount we have in commercial paper right now was down about 2.5% versus last month. So those are the only changes there. One change I want to point out in the fund summary in the bottom left, we used to have more funds here. We recently closed an account we had at a bank that we called the SRF Operating Fund that used to be listed separately here. That was just really for administrative purposes. So we used to fund that account, and then that money would go and fund SRF debt and principal. We just consolidated that into our operations account. Just administratively, it's a little bit easier to keep those funds consolidated and invested instead of just having a different step in between there. So all those funds are now consolidated in that MSD operations, which is really where almost all of our funds are right now. You can see debt project funds, we're down to under 30 million there. Those would be the capital markets revenue bonds. When we go out and issue those bonds, the money comes in and then gets spent over time. So we are getting down near the end of those funds. Our next bond funding is going to come from the WIFIA program and the SRF, which we don't get big balances. Those actually we draw on as we use them. So we're not going to have a debt project fund balance in a little bit until we go out to the capital markets again later. Maturity distribution in the bottom right, not big changes here. Everything in our portfolio and in the benchmark index right now is from 0 to 3 years. Ours is concentrated more in that 0 to 1 and 1 and 2 years. The benchmark is more 1 to 2 and 2 to 3. That drives a little bit of the difference in the yield to maturity, but not too much. But those are not big changes from what we've seen in the past. If there are no questions on the operating fund portfolio, the Finance Committee meeting has no further business.
All right, thank you. Next meeting scheduled for May 2nd. A motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Yeah, I know we're.
Okay, I'd like to welcome, to call the Stakeholder Relations Committee meeting to order. Welcome to this is the the April meeting of the Stakeholder Relations Committee. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yes. All right. We'll note that all trustees are present, including Trustee Fair, who is online.
Okay, I have no comment, but I'll request a motion to approve the committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Sorry. Thank you. That meeting without objection, the minutes are approved. We'll move on to the presentation, the diversity report presentation. Ms. Paredes, how are you this morning?
Great. Thank you. I'll be presenting Diversity Semi-Annual Report for our fiscal year 2023 that runs July 1st through December 31st, 2022. The report this morning will cover our capital program utilization and workforce for both construction and design, the small contractor infrastructure repairs program, our community benefits initiatives, and an update on our disparity study implementation plans for our disparity study. Next slide. For capital construction, there were 32 projects worth $56.8 million during the period. 29 were sewer projects and one was under 50,000 that did not have any goals. There were 3 projects funded through our SRF Missouri funds. All of the projects awarded during the period met or exceeded the goals for MWBE participation during the period. 11 million or 19.5% was committed to MWBE contractors. And on active projects, MSD paid out $102.8 million with 25% of the funds made to MWBE companies. Next slide. The current goals for workforce are 30% minority, 7% women, and 40% apprentice. And for our state-funded projects, the goals for workforce are 14.7% minority and 6.9% women. There were 216,811 hours worked on 67 active projects during the period. 65,000 hours were worked on 22 state-funded projects for a total of 89 active projects that were working with workforce requirements during the period. Next slide. The workforce programs in construction remains consistent with past performance with overall participation close to 30%. And when we factor in the lower goals on the state-funded projects, our participation remains good. With the women participation, we consistently have met over the 7% program goals. We continue to see diverse training taking place also, as you can see here, with 52% of the total training hours that took place on MSD projects going to minorities and women. So we consistently have seen good workforce participation. Next, I'll cover the design, utilization, and workforce area. For professional services, there were 6 design contracts worth $4.4 million, or 47.6% participation of the total spend that went to MWBE firms in professional services. 48.8% of the total payments made on active design contracts went to minority and women-owned firms. And during this period, we observed a significant decline in the number of minorities working in the local offices. As you can see, our minority goal was 18% minority, 32% women. And participation during the period shows 11.10% minority participation in the offices and 30.9% women participation. Our plans include continuation of targeted strategies aimed at increasing workforce for diverse professionals, with our efforts focused on initiatives such as those that we conduct with our CBA partnerships with organizations such as NSD, and also through education, internships, and scholarships where we consistently partner with partners that focus on increasing participation in these areas. In this next slide, I'll also cover our small contractor program. It continues to produce real opportunities in the sewer construction industry for diverse businesses. Total program spend during the period was $2.1 million, with 39% total program dollars awarded to MWBEs. There was a total of 140 projects so far that year in our fiscal year, with 51 or 36% of those projects being performed by MWBEs who were prime contractors on those projects. Next slide. So for our community benefits initiatives, we continue our efforts along with our community benefits partners that you see listed here. Our efforts are targeted and focused on eliminating barriers to doing business with MSD, sustainability of diverse participation, and to move actions into impact within our communities. MSD's interactions with the signatories in support of our CBA agreement include ongoing efforts of sustainability with the focus of programming and initiatives, which includes implementation of the disparity study update results, continuation of workforce development, education, scholarships, internships, and efforts also aimed at increasing opportunities for diverse businesses. Next slide. The next slide will highlight some of those initiatives and efforts that we continue to participate in. Our programs for education, internships, scholarships, aimed at reducing and eliminating those barriers within our underrepresented communities are some of those that you see listed here. We had 2 high school interns last summer, and we sponsored 20 participants through the Bud Pre-Apprenticeship Program. And here you see our 3 scholarship recipients from the ERTC SIUE Environmental Resource Training Center Program for treatment plant operators. And they have continued to thrive in the program, and these 3 are expected they're nearing the end of the certification program, and now they're ready to serve their prospective internships. That's a requirement of the program in order for them to take their test to receive their certification. And next, I'll also want to cover the updates for our disparity study update. As we move closer to the implementation of the disparity study results and recommendations, I want to point out that all of our program changes are going to be effective at the beginning of our next fiscal year, which starts July 1st of 2023. And however, the procurement, what I like to cover first is our engineering design professional services area updates, because the procurement processes for these projects that will happen in our next fiscal year have begun. The program updates will include implementation of the new goals in professional services area. We anticipate that these will be attainable based on the current levels of participation we've seen across our professional service programs over the past 5 years, which has been upward of 40% participation without any goals in place. Last year's participation for fiscal year 22 was 64.3%. And as I reported earlier, our first half of this fiscal year yielded 47%. So for contracts, according to our recommendations, for contracts and professional services between $50,000 and $500,000, those contracts will have a combined MWBE participation goal of 31%. And for contracts exceeding $500,000, those will have the specific MBE and WBE goals that would apply of 18% MBE and 13% WBE. We'll also continue with incentive credits on RFQs and RFPs, where consultants can earn up to the total 20% evaluation credits. And workforce goals also increased to 31% minority and 37% women. And we're fully aware of the current state of the labor market and how these goals are considered to be a stretch considering our current labor market. But what we're prepared to do is work with the consulting industry to meet the parameters of good faith efforts because of our goals and because we want everyone to be, including the contractors, to be successful across our program. So we're working with our industry partners to make sure that they are successful with meeting either good faith efforts and or attaining our workforce goals. Also, beginning in July 1st, we'll also start tracking all of our subcontractor spend throughout the duration of the contract. Instead of collecting the information at the end of the contract, we'll be collecting and reporting on that information as the contracts are taking place throughout the contracts. And so the next slide will cover the construction area. The construction area, same as engineering, those goals and recommendations will be effective beginning July 1st. The subcontract goals will apply to contracts $50,000 and above. The building construction goals are 21% MBE, 10% WBE for building construction, and non-building or sewer projects will have the 10% MBE and 10% WBE goals. Those are the same goals currently that we have for our SRF funded projects. Workforce goals will increase to 37% minority, 11% women, and again, we'll be working with our industry to make sure that we are in alignment with the labor that is taking place on MSD projects. And tracking, will also be tracking all subcontract participation across these construction projects as well. And that concludes our diversity semi-annual report. As you can see, we've remained consistent with our successful programming, and we anticipate that we'll be successful in the future.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Ms. Paradis? Thank you again, Sean.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to the next item, and it is Ms. Coleman. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Trustee. Trustees, I'd like to bring your attention to proposed ordinance 1610.
I'm not sure that mic's on. There we go.
I probably need to speak closer into it. So, Trustees, I'd like to bring your attention to proposed ordinance 16109. This is for the classification plan. This particular ordinance is aligning the classification plan to the recommendations from the 2023 compensation study for the C and for the unclassified positions. And it also includes other changes associated with equity and various business needs. This particular changes, what happened with the compensation study, as you may remember, is the district contracted with Lockton companies to do the compensation study. The study was provided to all of the MSD employees and the union members, and public comments were accepted at the public meeting that we held. The compensation study and the public comments were presented to the Civil Service Commission on February 17th, 2023. The Civil Service Commission, by unanimous approval, moved the recommendations from the compensation study forward to the board from the 2023 compensation study for C and U positions only, and the changes associated with the equity and business needs of the district. All of these changes have been approved by the Civil Service Commission, and I'll review those. The following positions were removed. There were no employees that were terminated or impacted. Most of these positions were empty or retitled. It was for operations. We had the carpenter position, the equipment operator, the fleet and general painter, heavy equipment helper 1, heavy equipment mechanic, and treatment plant operator the treatment plant operator position. In finance, the assistant counting manager was also removed. As for the new positions, the accounts payable team lead position is now a grade C2. The billings and collections team lead is also a grade C2. An operations or warehouse buyer position was created, and that is a union position, and it has been reviewed by the unions. But that position was a new position created called it's a grade A10. Another position operations that was created was the senior safety coordinator position. In IT, the IT network engineer position, which is a C8, and the IT security engineer position, which is also a C8. As for the grade changes, in engineering, the laboratory technician moved from a C1 to a C2. Principal engineer moved from a C10 to a C11. Program manager moved from a C11 to C12. And the right-of-way agents moved from a C4 to a C5. In finance, the accounting one position moved to from a C2 to a C3. Accounting 2 moved from a C4 to a C5. Accounting 3 moved from a C6 to a C7. Accounting's billing manager moved from a C8 to a C9. Billings and collection manager moved from a C8 to a C9. And the purchasing manager also moved from a C8 to a C9. In the general counsel's office, the attorney 1 positions moved from a C5 to a C6. Attorney 2 positions moved from a C8 to a C9. Attorney 3s moved from a C13 to a C14. And the paralegal position moved from a C1 to a C2. In IT, the enterprise application lead position moved from a C9 to a C10. The IT specialist 1 position for asset management moved from a C2 to a C3. IT specialist 1 network engineer moved from a C2 to a C3. IT specialist 1 for security analyst moved from a C2 to a C3. IT specialist 1 for the service administrator moved from a C2 to a C3. IT specialist 1 for the support analyst position moved from a C2 to a C3. IT specialist 2 position in asset management moved from a C5 to a C7. IT specialist 2 network engineer moved from a C5 to a C7. IT specialist 2 service administrator went from a C5 to a C7. IT 2 security analyst moved from a C5 to a C7. And the program analyst senior position moved from a C7 to a C8. Within operations, the SCADA administrator supervisor position moved from a C7 to a C8. The principal engineer in the operations division moved from a C10 to a C11. And the safety coordinator position moved from a C5 to a C3. In the executive director's office, the the security supervisor position moved from a C7 to a C6. The senior public affairs specialist moved from a C5 to a C6. And the manager of public affairs moved from a U8 to a U9. The assistant director of engineering moved from a U13 to a U14. Director of human resources moved from a U13 to a U15. And the director of finance moved from a U15 to a U16. And that concludes those changes on the classification plan. Are there any questions about that before I move on to the compensation plan? Okay. So if you would please look at ordinance number 16110, which is regarding the compensation plan. And the majority of changes on this one are just clerical errors that was discovered. So in this particular one, we're clarifying the attachment D that was on this particular ordinance. And it removes the unclassified grades and associating job titles from the compensation plan and putting that on the classification plan where it's just a more logical move. The title of attachment D now says C and U, because the C and U pay grades are equal. And so that gives a better clarification on that particular plan. And it just makes it more clear for everyone to understand as they look at it. And then the pay ranges for both C and U positions for pay rates effective on June 17th, 2023 have also been updated. In addition, the table of unclassified grades with associating job titles, as previously mentioned, was removed from that plan and added to the classification plan. And that covers the clerical updates and clarifying language that we put on the compensation plan. Trustees, are there any questions about those changes or updates?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Too.
Attorney?
Okay, last but not least, we'll try to get you out of here. Proposed ordinance 16108 will authorize the executive director to enter into a retainer agreement with Aqualaw, Napoli, Shanolnik, and Robbins, Geller, Rudman, and Dowd for them to represent MSD at no cost to MSD in litigation against manufacturers of perfluoroalkyl substances, or better known as PFAS. This litigation will seek to recoup costs from PFAS chemicals ending up in MSD's sewer system and protect MSD's interests while holding the manufacturers of PFAS responsible for these chemicals rather than shifting the burden to the innocent ratepayers. Are there any questions regarding this? Okay, I think that's all that's on the agenda for today.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
The next scheduled meeting, committee meeting is Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023. And if no one has anything for the good of the body, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good day, guys.